Hello, once again. I am your host, Doc Rotten, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. Back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-hosts on the net, and we're doing something incredibly special this week. This episode, we're revisiting Hannibal with season 1, episode 1. Leftovers, doggy bags, whatever you want to call it. We're going back to the well on this, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So let's find out who's with us. Joining us tonight is the one and only Christopher G. Moore. Christopher, how you doing? Oh, I lost you. Christopher G. Moore.
Is this your design?
This is my design, yes.
I'm doing wonderful. As you know, I'm a huge Hannibal. I even got my little Hannibal with me to keep me company. I'm really excited for us to go back through because this show is the reason I met you guys. It's the reason I became a part of the Gruesome Magazine Horror News Radio families, because I became part of that podcast initially as a guest and then as a host. I'm very thankful. Not only that Hannibal is my favorite TV show, but I'm thankful that it allowed me to meet you guys and become better friends because of this.
Yeah, that was because you came on. We did an interview with you for Future of Horror podcast about your short films, and then we met at a horror convention, and we started talking Hannibal, and we said, "You come on board." And it wasn't long before you were a regular, and other regulars were Thomas Mariani, of course, and the one and only Dave Dreher. Dave, do you remember those days?
I do remember those days. Why did we not do season 1 though? I don't recall. Why did we wait till the second season to start the podcast for Hannibal?
Because we were just slow on the draw, man.
Oh, okay.
We were just slow on the draw.
Good enough.
But we did. Of course, we have a new co-host with us this time. The three of us are returning now to do season 1, which we didn't do, but we're going to actually, if this holds up, we'll go through all 3 seasons again. But joining us is Scarlett Spitfire. Vanessa, how you doing?
Hey, good. I got my Dr. Bloom attire on. This is a formal event this evening.
A formal event.
So I had to be prepared.
Yeah, so have some people over for dinner.
That's right. Surprise dinner. I'll cook.
Yes. Now, is this a first-time watch for you?
Yes.
So that's going to be an interesting perspective. It's going to be real curious to see how many people that listen to going through this again with what are we calling it, Christopher? We're calling it
Leftovers?
Leftovers? Yes. Leftovers.
Yeah. The Hannibal. I mean, this is the kind of leftovers it tastes just as good the first time. It reminds you of how delicious it was to begin with. And it's not like one of these things where you put it in the microwave and it doesn't taste the same and it feels rubbery. No, this feels just as delicious as it first came out the oven. So yeah. and as usual, I bring a food analogy into it.
This is the perfect show for that. So let's dive into what we're talking about. We're talking about season 1, episode 1, and this is April 4th, 2013. So since we started, Dave, in April of 2013, that might have had a little bit to do with it. When we started H&R.
Yeah, that's true.
The second season came in our second year, so that we were more prepared to do it. But this is called Apéritif. Apéritif?
Apéritif.
Thank you. Dave, you're going to pronounce all these for us because you have the experience on that. The synopsis is: the head of FBI Behavioral Science Unit, Jack Crawford, calls on profiler Will Graham to assist him to catch a serial killer. The killer has now kidnapped 8 women, all similar in appearance and always on a Friday. Yes, I don't remember that being a part of it. That's hilarious. His most recent victim is Elise Nichols. Graham has been teaching at the FBI Academy and isn't too keen on going out into the field. He is particularly empathetic and has a tendency to get too far involved in these type of cases. Crawford arranges for a well-known psychiatrist, Hannibal Lecter, to work with him to ease the stress. It seems Lecter has his own plans for Will. Episode 1 is directed by David Slade. It's written by Bryan Fuller, based on Red Dragon, of course, by Thomas Hare. So let's start off by going through the cast. So we got Hugh Dancy has been brought on board to play Will Graham. Mads Mikkelsen is playing Dr. Hannibal Lecter, and Laurence Fishburne is playing Jack Crawford. Now, these characters, of course, are very well known for the Red Dragon book. And what was the name of the first movie? Because they didn't go by Red Dragon, they went by a different name.
Manhunter.
Yeah. Now, this Mads Mikkelsen was an interesting choice, because I remember us talking about it even before we started recording it. Is that can anybody live up, right? Can anybody live up to the iconic Hannibal portrayal? And he obviously did. But Christopher, he wasn't the first choice. You sent us an article about some other choices they wanted.
First of all, they wanted a more of an American type star. So one of the guys they were looking at was John Cusack, which as much as I like John Cusack, he's no Hannibal. He's sorry.
No Hannibal.
And Hugh Grant was another person. So he's the foreign one they looked at, but I just don't see him being able to pull that role off. And I think Mads is the perfect person for that role, because you can sort of see that, that he could be that kind of person that people can trust, but at the same time, you see that glimmer in his eye that something's a little bit off with him. Yeah,
there's an air of sophistication and a hint of intimidation all wrapped up in him. So we'll talk about these characters as we go through the season. On the other side of the cast is, am I pronouncing this right? Etienne Park is FBI crime scene investigator Beverly Katz. Is that close?
I think so.
I think I misspelled Caroline Devranas as Dr. Alana Bloom, and Laura Jean Chorostecki as Freddie Lowndes. Now, Freddie Lowndes is not in episode 1, but I included her here. She becomes a semi-regular this season and really gets into some trouble later on.
The Caroline who played a Dr. Alana Bloom, she worked with Bryan Fuller on a show called Wonder Falls. And when he was making Hannibal, he asked her, which part do you want? Do you want Dr. Bloom or Freddie Lowndes?
Ooh.
And she picked Dr. Bloom. So we could have been watching a show where she might have been Freddie.
Oh, well, that would have been interesting.
Yeah. Also, just wanted to mention real quick, Fishburne. He worked with Scott Glenn on Apocalypse Now. And so he felt like by taking on the Jack Crawford role that it would allow him to sort of step in the shoes of someone he saw as sort of like a cool uncle.
Oh, wow. Cool uncle.
He was really young when he made Apocalypse Now.
Can you imagine Scott Glenn being the uncle? No, I can't. All right. We also have Scott Thompson as CSI Jimmy Price, Aaron Abrams as CSI Brian Zeller, and Casey Roll as Abigail Hobbs. Now, Abigail Hobbs is at this point a guest star, but she becomes far more important as the series goes on. So that's our main cast. There are others involved, and we'll talk about those as we go along. But what we want to do is get our first impression of, or I guess it's our second impression because we've all seen this, except for Vanessa. So we're going to start off with her. What is, and I did that again, I've got to hit the right button. What is your first impression of season 1, episode 1 of Hannibal?
I had no idea what to expect going into this, other than what I've heard y'all say and what I've heard Chris say. Basically, since the day I met him, I've heard Chris talk about not only the series as a whole, the Hannibal Lecter and Red Dragon, but this series in particular. So I was really excited going into it. Didn't know what to expect because it's cable, and things that run on cable, you don't necessarily have the highest expectations for. You tend to lower the bar a little bit for what you're going to see and, how in depth they're going to go with certain things, especially when you're covering something like this. But I was hooked from the start. I love Will Graham. I love our CSI trio.
Yeah,
I love them so much. I love the beauty. I love Hannibal Lecter played by Mads Mikkelsen. I think that was perfect casting. But what's really speaks to me is the procedural aspect of it, the FBI part of it, breaking down, these victims and get, digging down into the soul of these serial killers. Like I'm finding myself taking that as the lead and everything else kind of secondary and building that up. And I'm having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. Now we should note that this aired on NBC back in 2013, and it does get rather gruesome, especially for network television. And for 2013, it didn't seem to get hit with a whole lot of stuff as far as censorship and things. I'm sure Christopher's got some ideas about what actually got censored, especially in upcoming episodes. But there are some graphics in here that are rather shocking. And then there's other things that are just what they're implying is rather shocking. I can't remember what night it was originally on, but eventually it settled on Fridays. And I think that gave it a little bit more. No, it was on Thursdays, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember.
I think it was Thursdays.
Yeah. But it just seemed to fly under the radar as far as censorship.
Well, the article that I showed you guys about John Cusack and stuff initially, when they cast Mads, the studio wasn't really behind the show anymore. They didn't think that some foreign actor that nobody knew would be able to bring people to it. So they basically kept their hands off the show. So, and I think that's why Fuller thinks that maybe he got away with a whole lot more than he expected, because they didn't really have a lot of confidence in the show. So
it certainly felt like a stepchild, right? But it gathered a following pretty quickly, as the three of us, now four of us, can attest to. So, Christopher, what is it like revisiting this now? 7 years later?
It's interesting because there's it's like one of those things where you go back and you see things you didn't see before, and then a lot of times, I've done with this like I used to do, where I'd go and try to find information. Although it's really hard now when you're having to look up stuff from 2013. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I didn't really pay attention to as much, but it also reminded me of the things that influenced me as a filmmaker. Like, and Vanessa, you'll see this soon, that there's a lot of really cool transition type stuff. Which like there's that one transition where he's in the shower, and then you go through the shower curtain and you see like the stag. Did you know that he was actually showering in a field?
No,
really?
It wasn't two different shots. They actually had him fake showering in a field, and they just opened it up so they could show the stag. And the stag, the image of the stag is actually a combination of a stag, the stag's head, and raven feathers. So it's not like that's not a normal stag. It actually has feathers on it. So if you pay attention to that, so things like that, I didn't really take it. Also the first time we meet Will Graham, when Jack Crawford comes up to him, and he actually says the mental disorders that he has, which I never really paid attention to that for some reason, that he actually had all these specific disorders, which explains that he's on some kind of spectrum, with the way he operates. Also, he doesn't necessarily need to wear glasses. The reason that the one part where Jack Crawford pushes up his glasses, because he wears glasses to be antisocial. He supposedly only needs them to see far out. And so he always looks at the rims of his glasses so he doesn't have to pay attention to people. And which is a really interesting thing, which is actually based on Bryan Fuller worked with a director once who didn't want to look people in the eye. He'd always look at the outer rim of his glasses. So that's where he got that idea. So things like that I didn't really know about, researching it and just watching the use of shadow and color. There's some really cool sequences visually, and the transition stuff. We get into a lot of the light pendulum stuff, which is based on one line, I think, from Red Dragon, where it talks about decriminalizing a crime scene is like centering himself, and it's like a pendulum swinging in the darkness of his mind. And that's where Fuller got that idea to use little won't anytime that Will Graham is trying to get into the mindset of these killers. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool visual stuff. I think was it David Slade, I think, directed it, and he's just a visual powerhouse to begin with. I don't know. I'll stop because I could talk like for 5 hours.
Well, I know that after they filmed the first episode, they actually went back and rescripted the next few, right? Didn't they? Because they took in a slightly different direction. Not really sure about the details there, but well,
although I did find out there's one deleted scene.
No.
The woman that gets thrown on the horns, on the stag horns, the stag rack or whatever. There was a scene where you actually see her talking. Hannibal's talking to her, and she blows smoke in his face. And you know what he does to rude people?
That might be a little too obvious.
He turns them into dinner. Yeah. So but they cut that scene out, which I kind of wish I'd been able to see that. It's not on the Blu-ray or anything, so I don't know if that footage exists. But yeah, I don't know. I think and the first time you see Hannibal, he's eating, and you see his mouth before you see his full face. So yeah, visually, it's just an amazing show. I can't say enough good things about it, and it continues to inspire me. It's such a gorgeous show that makes you even consider like, maybe I could eat human meat.
No. All right, Dave Dreher, I'm so excited you're back with us because you do have experience as a chef. And
never cooked a human yet, though.
Yet, he says. Yet. But share with me revisiting this first episode and seeing Hannibal cook once again.
So watching him fire up the oven once again. Well, if you remember right, I was always kind of the naysayer of this. Everyone else kind of loved this series like right out the gate, and I was like, I'm not seeing it. I had a very, very difficult time understanding Mads the entire first season. It's easier watching it this time because I think I've gotten used to him. But initially, when this first came on, I think I called him a mumble mouth or a mush mouth because it was just literally, I'm like, what? I watched it 3 or 4 times over trying to figure out what the hell he was talking about. That's been better this time. I still get in the vibe. We're only 2 hours. I'm trying to only watch these, as we're recording these shows. And the first season, I recall to me came across as being very X-File-ish. Like each episode was like this little mystery that Will had to solve. And, it was kind of weird. And I was thinking, I wanted to know more about the Will and Dr. Hannibal relationship, which we don't get a ton of in the first season, if I remember right. And we haven't, at least in the first 2 episodes that we've watched so far. And, we're meeting these different serial killers and watching Will kind of hunt them down, which felt very X-File-ish to me at the time. And again, I'm going to kind of reiterate that here, but rewatching it the second time, I go into it with the appreciation of knowing what this series is going to become, because it eventually did win me over, and I became in the Christopher G. Moore camp of praising,
yes, you did.
praising the show. But I have to reiterate on this rewatch, I'm still kind of a little put out of it. I'm glad there's a season 2 and 3, because if it hadn't, I don't know that I would have been as exuberant to discuss this again.
you wouldn't be ready to revisit it if you didn't know where it was heading, right?
But I mean, there's great visuals. I mean, the things they come up with, as we progress through this, the different serial killers and the things that they're doing, is great. And I love the way, we watch Will solve these, how he puts himself in them, and, he becomes who he's hunting, and he's able to kind of piece it all together. And it's fascinating to watch happen.
It is. And I think that's part of the magic is, you watch this relationship between Hannibal and Will form and then grow and become akin to a bromance. It is quite fascinating because of how they manipulate people around them and each other, knowingly or not knowingly. But I agree with you, Dave. I remember sitting down, I was excited about this and watching it, and I was like, the first episode didn't really win me over for very much the same reason. I had a hard time understanding Mads. And I remember that it wasn't until the episode with the mushrooms that won me over, and then I was hooked. I found out that's the second episode. We'll be talking about that next episode. So it didn't take me long. And I remember watching the first episode with the subtitles on so we could understand Mads. I didn't have a problem. I guess over 3 years of watching him, and then now in other movies, you come to understand the Mads. But there's the care that's taken to create these characters, especially our leads, and the relationships between them is so precise and so intricate. They're laying all this groundwork down. They're putting down all these bricks for everybody to walk on, and it's really amazing. I really fascinated when, because we don't get a whole lot of interaction with Hannibal and Will in the first episode in the way that we will, because really they technically Hannibal comes on as a secondary consultant and to kind of look over Will, and then the whole Abigail Hobbs thing happens at the end of the first episode and lays the groundwork for all kinds of shenanigans.
Hey, what does that? I've watched it a couple times now, trying to figure out. But when and this could be spoilery, or actually, I guess it is spoilery. So, but Christopher, I know you will know the answer to this. After Will shoots Hobbs, as he's laying there dying, he says something which seems to startle Will. But I cannot make out what he says. What does he say?
You talking about Hobbs?
It's like, literally as he's dying, Will shoots him. Boom, boom, boom. He's sliced the girl's neck. He's laying there, and the guy, as he's dying, he says something to Will.
See?
I think he says "see" or
is that what he said? I'm like, what's he saying?
Yeah.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah,
which plays into it because later on, this probably plays in the second episode, but Hannibal mentions that your mirror of yourself shows your true self as opposed to others in the mirror. So I think if anything, it's just opening up, because I think they even mentioned later, because of him, he's never really shot anybody or killed anybody. And
right.
That sort of opens up his sort of mental break, allowing him to, to become,
when we
what
get
Hannibal wants him to be.
Yeah, when we get talking about the second episode, we really dive into that. Here we just establish Will as his ability to kind of walk backwards through a crime scene and see what happens and what. So Christopher, what is his line? What is Will Graham's line that he says every time?
Oh, this is my design.
This is my design. Every single one. And it's really interesting the way he kind of puts the Lego pieces together. And I think, Vanessa, that's what you were reacting to, right? He does what he's hired to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. And I love the science behind it. And then the scientists trying to figure out how things happen. Like you said, we really get into it more in the second episode. They break that open. But in this one, I really like how they established his the diagnosis that he has, like you were saying earlier, Chris, that he's autistic, that he's on the spectrum, that he has Asperger's. And, I like how they show that in this character as someone who's completely functioning in one way, but completely lacking in other ways, completely not a social person, but can go into this mind palace and catch these crazy serial killers. And I really appreciate how they're building a character around that. I've watched further ahead. I couldn't stop. So I'm already in season 2. Yeah, I couldn't. I'm going to finish it before we get much further, so I'll have to go back. But especially in the next season, what they do with that, with those abilities that he has, and how grounded he is in them. I really, really appreciated that. And the way that it shows how he's handling this, like his last interactions with Hobbs, how that affects him, how that sets the tone for the rest of the season, and how that's going to push him to do things he probably shouldn't do.
Yeah, quite a bit. Now, one last thing we should talk about is that Hannibal does show a mean streak. At least one. He calls up Hobbs, and lets him know that they know. That's all he tells them. They know, and he sets off this chain of events to manipulate Will into the situation that he finds himself in at the end of this episode. Christopher, how important was that to do in the first episode and get us, because it's a subtle taste, right? We don't see him kill, but we see him, he has death in his mind, right?
Well, you see how much of a manipulator he is, which this is just the early strings of that. Later on, you get to see how much, he gets to manipulating people around him, especially how much he manipulates Will Graham, because he sees the potential and sees a little bit of himself in him. So yeah, I mean, I think you get that taste of that. Cause I think one of our favorite things we talked about in the series is when he talks about this is his human, I think his human suit or something. There's some kind of line he uses.
Yeah.
So he's not the crazy person that we saw, in the Silence of the Lambs. He's having to maintain this personage so that he can manipulate his round. Because, like, for instance, when he's in the car with Will Graham, he's asking about the FBI procedures. And he uses that knowledge to get around so he can do murders and do that kind of stuff later on. So you get to see the early stages of, early hints at, him manipulating stuff behind the scenes. But, and there's a lot of stuff we don't see that you find out later he's been doing all the time.
Yes.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. And, I think one of the cool things is, the first murder where Will Graham goes into the house and stuff, that actually is Francis Dollarhide actually caused that murder, and they shot that with a 1,000 frame phantom camera to get that extreme slow motion stuff to sort of show that like method he thinks and stuff. But yeah, I think we get to see the early stages of Hannibal, and it gets even better as it goes along.
Oh my! All right, so I'm going to let's wrap things up, but let's do things a little differently than we do normally, as far as like grades and all that and favorite scenes. Although I am going to ask you a favorite scene, but Dave, wrap things up. But when it comes to somebody new coming on, or so even somebody revisiting, what do you want? What would you say to them so they won't give up in these early episodes, like you may have? If you didn't know where they were going,
just give it time. Give it time. If you're going in as a fan of the book or a fan of the films, you're likely to be kind of disappointed because it seems that they've actually kind of gone out of their way to create something totally different, a different take on this. So you have to kind of buy into the take of what they're trying to show you here. But it is worth it. And actually, even in the second episode, it starts being worth it, if you will. So yeah, just hang in there. You'll be able to understand. You've got to learn to translate the mad.
But
it can be done. So yeah, just give it time. I mean, Christopher gets very excited about this show, and for very good, because it becomes exceptional. So hang in there.
Hang in there. Favorite scene, sir? First episode.
Favorite scene? I was not prepared for a favorite scene. I don't know. Favorite scene. Let me think real quick. Boy, nothing like dead air to really make things go here.
You want me to circle back on that?
I really do like the scene. You actually already mentioned it, but it's where you kind of know, because again, going into this, if you don't know that Hannibal is a particularly bad guy, you do know when he makes that phone call, and just the way Mads does it with that. I mean, basically he just says the two words, they know. He says the guy's name and he goes, yes. He goes, they know, or they're coming, or something like that. And it's like, that dirty bastard, he's a turncoat. And I like that. And I like the way Mads played that scene. I thought it was very good. And then especially after they show up at the guy's house, it's just good. That whole sequence is really, really good.
It is. Mm-hmm. All right, Vanessa, this is going to be exciting because this is the first time for you. So those who are watching that maybe like you watching it for the first time and wanting, what would you like to say about that? Because you've already gone ahead. So
yeah, I did. I can't say I disagree with Dave. The first episode isn't really the one that hooks you. Honestly, it's the second episode, I think, is the one that hooks you. And I have subtitles. I already have subtitles on all the time when I'm watching things.
Smart.
This especially, but only the first episode. After that doesn't seem so noticeable or so difficult to understand. But watch it. I've been telling everyone about it. I literally, someone was telling me they're watching Dexter. I'm like, as soon as you finish Dexter, watch Hannibal.
Yes, Dexter.
Yes, and I was telling my mom, she's like, I can't watch anything too gruesome. I'm like, no, Mom, you're gonna love it. If you can watch the ID channel, you can definitely watch Hannibal, and it's so much better. I'm just obsessed with Mads Mikkelsen in this role. Honestly, he pulls it off so well. He's so suave. He's so debonair. He has angles that just cut when you look at them, and he is everything that you imagine this character is, or at least a younger version, right? But yeah, definitely watch it because I am loving it. I am about halfway through season 2 and I am just hooked.
Do you have a favorite scene from the first episode you want to share?
I do. So my favorite scene is when Will is at the parents of the last missing girl. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to find out, trying to get ahead of it. And then he goes upstairs and goes into her bedroom, and we have that kind of reveal that happens. I really enjoyed that. And then he goes into his mind palace and he kind of replays what happened to her and how she's different from the other ones. That's where it really started to get me really hooked into it.
Yeah, that's actually quite a gimmick, that a great gimmick. They use heavily in the first, and then they kind of scale back a little bit as we go, but it's still it's him. All right, let's wrap this up with Christopher G. Moore. You are the Fannibal among Fannibals. So man, I don't know if we have to sell it, but let's do that. Sell this show to anybody listening.
Okay. Well, first of all, you can see, throughout this whole series that Bryan Fuller has a huge love for Thomas Harris's material. So you're going to find a lot of things. If you've read any of his books, you're going to find specific things that come from all the different novels. Sometimes even pieces of dialogue. That whole dialogue scene between Bloom and Jack Crawford, where they're talking about Will Graham. That dialogue is actually from Red Dragon. The scene where you first meet Hannibal Lecter when he's eating and stuff, the music they play is from Silence of the Lambs. And so, yeah, you're going to find a lot of things that tie to the kind of stuff, but also you get to see how he sort of plays around with some of that stuff and does something a little bit different with the stories and the characters. I mean, this is not the Hannibal Lecter that most people probably know from Silence of the Lambs. This is a totally different sort of, you get to see just a lot of the stuff that they sort of spelled out in the book, but they played them a little bit different when it came to the movies and stuff. But yeah, the main thing is this show is shot like it's a beautiful movie. There are movies that aren't shot as well as this show is. And I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of different talent that they brought in directors wise. And also I think a lot of it has to do with the people who wrote on the show. I think Bryan Fuller wrote the screenplay for the first episode, but and then there's also little tidbits that you don't expect. There's an Incredible Hulk line. Do you guys remember that line? It's like, don't psychoanalyze me. You won't like me when I'm psychoanalyzed. Yeah. There's a Hannibal Lecter. I mean, there's a Incredible Hulk joke in there, TV series. But yeah, it's just, I mean, there's little tidbits, there's all about, a lot of the stuff from the psychoanalysis type stuff is actually from Bryan Fuller. His stuff his therapist tells him, he incorporates that stuff into the screenplay. And that's what makes it sort of interesting and stuff you don't see on any other type of show. So yeah, it's, and then you also have these visual flourishes with like transitions sometimes, there's a lot of, especially when it comes to him like going into his mindset to figure out things. There's a really cool shot where it goes past in his car, and it goes from not having blood on his face to not, back and forth. There's a lot of the things where they shoot things backwards or shoot things in slow motion. There's a lot of stuff there's a lot of time and effort that was put into creating this that makes it much more just as gorgeous as the food they create, and also just the attention to detail with the food. This is like, there's scenes in this show that'll put the Food Network to shame, because Hannibal Lecter's so good, and they really take the attention to detail. Like, this scene where he's cutting up the human lungs. In the script, it said he was supposed to hammer it, but his food, the chef or something they have on it, gives him ideas like, what would happen if you cooked a human? He says, no, you would actually squeeze the air out, so things like that, the attention to detail. So yeah, it's just very beautiful. And talking, let me just point out a few things. I like the Incredible Hulk dialogue. I think one of my other favorite lines was when Jack Crawford's like, says, go to the women's room, when they're in the bathroom.
Oh yeah,
that scene cracked me up. So I completely forgot about that scene. I was laughing out loud in my living room. One of my favorite scenes is the scene where Hannibal shows up at I guess it's the hotel room for Will Graham, and he asks, can he come in? And it's almost like a vampire asking to be invited in into his darkness, into this dark lair. And it's all shot with what they call negative fill, where it's like, it's mostly in darkness, and you just have those slithers of light, and they actually shoot it mostly from the side until the very end, where there's that full on shot of Hannibal. And they have that wonderful scene where they talk about things. This is the first time that he gives him a taste of human, because that, you think that sausage is real sausage? is from a pig? No, it's from a human. Mm-hmm. And so he in the same way that a vampire, allows him to just, to bite into his neck so he can become a vampire. That's almost like him inviting him in. And also there's one line in that where he talks about a fragile teacup, which plays into later.
We get that.
So yeah. That scene I think is a good scene that sort of spells out, just how artful this show is. And also we used to do the stuff like the what the fuck moment, like the scene where he has the image of the woman like floating in darkness and the antlers come through her body. Mm-hmm. I love that scene. But anyway, let me stop. I can talk for 5 million hours.
Yeah, we're thinking back. Yes, thank you for reminding me about that. I'm not going to say a whole lot other than this was fantastic. The next episode, I'm really going to have a lot more to say about. I do want to ask Dave. I'm going to put you on the spot, sir.
Yes.
How do you? Okay, so you told me how to pronounce the title of the show. What is it?
Appetizer, basically.
Well, actually, aperitif is actually an alcoholic drink you drink before to get your body ready for
get your palate ready. Yeah,
palate ready to
eat. Nice. Okay. That works for a first episode, right?
It stimulates your appetite.
Yes.
All right. Well, if you guys are listening to this, we want to thank you for coming back with us to revisit Hannibal, which played from 2013 through 2015. This is the first episode. We're going to do many, many more. If you like what you're doing, please subscribe down below, hit the like button, hit the little bell so you can get notified, and leave some comments to let us know what you think. And there's a nice little pop there, and all that goodness. If you're listening on the podcast, please subscribe. And for those who listen to us cover season 2 and season 3 and a few of the films, and you're listening to this, welcome back. It's been a bit. We missed you. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to keep going, especially next episode with mushrooms. All right. With that, Dave, I want to thank you for joining me. Christopher, you too. Vanessa, welcome. It's going to be exciting hearing your thoughts on this. Very much.
Oh, it's great. And I've had a few people reach out to me on Instagram that are really excited that we're coming back. So it's good to know that there's fans, that really love the show. Fanables, they're out there, and they want us to go back and chomp back into it.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about those who are discovering it for the first time. It which is that has changed, right, since when this first aired, is the binge watching and streaming and everything. So it's a kind of an interesting time and a great time to revisit Hannibal. So join us for this trip. All right, with that, let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
This is my design.